Evening Super League, it's that time of the week again, but in a season that has arguably been the best ever, we have decided to give you the best ever content. It's not the dreary same managers saying the same thing every week. This time, I am delivering 3 of the Super League's biggest fans and 3 people with some of the biggest opinions. First of all, representing Haggis, we have Mr. Tato Mourinho. Good evening, pal.
Evening, mate.
We've also got representing the Dragons, the man himself, Mr. Duggan. How are you, sir?
Evening, mate. You're not going to be falling a kip on us tonight, or what, are you?
No, mate. This is recorded much before the 2 a.m. Cinderella's left the ball time that I normally get.
And where's your cat's arse, just so we know? Is it going to walk across the screen anytime soon, or?
He's over there, currently sat on the radiator because I popped the heating on for an hour. It's dipped to 2 degrees. I thought I better. And we've also got representing basically the rest of us. Would you associate yourself, Dudley Hill, Mr. Dimble?
Kind of, yeah. I was a bit of I distanced myself as soon as he got playing, to be honest. But at the start, I was kind of back in stay. And as soon as I see selections, I kind of backed out of that one.
Listen, I'm very grateful you've all taken time out your Friday evenings to record this, and I very much look forward to seeing what you have to offer in terms of opinions. Let's start straight off the bat, and I think we have to say congratulations to Greavesy, Locomotive Boston, the first team to get the Q. Dimble, I'll come to you first on that one. Everyone says what a great job he's done with the squad he's got. As someone who's been watching now for quite a while, are you as impressed as some of the managers seem to be?
100%, yeah. I think I agreed with most of the comments I heard that the team going into the season probably weren't the most fancied. I think if you got a predicted league of everyone, that certainly would have been kind of bottom 2 or 3 in most people's predictions, and I probably would have agreed with that. But what Greasy has done is built a really kind of hard-working, solid team with loads of great mental stats, physical stats, and they're just grinding stuff out. And obviously, the players reflect the results he's got, I think, and he's been fantastic in terms of management and getting the best out of what you've got. He's probably pound for pound the best manager in the league at the moment.
I have this set on speaker cam, so no one watching can see the reactions of the other guys, but I can on my other camera. And Duggan, I can see you nodding away. I'm guessing you agree. What is it, in your opinion, when you look at some of the squads perhaps further down the league that on paper seem stronger? Why do you think Locomotive Boston have done so well?
So kind of anecdotally, I don't think he's made many changes throughout the course of the season. I think he's stayed with a really core spine of the squad. He knows it inside out. I'm a big fan of it. I love the fact that he just went into the season kind of under the radar, didn't really give it the big one with anybody, but then picked up, results along the way. I mean, I remember, I think we played them 3rd or 4th game of the season. I might be wrong on that, but I remember thinking, we've there's no way he's a patch on us, and he absolutely smashed us. I think he beat us home and away, to be fair, which won't come as much of a surprise to anybody. But I mean, if I was to say, Fifey, off the top of your head, how many games do you think he's lost all season?
4.
Because you've had luck, right? Yeah. Dimble, how many goals do you think he scored?
Probably not many more than a goal a game, I'd say. How many games has it been? 24?
24.
Yeah.
And how many has he conceded?
32, 33.
And how many has he conceded?
About a goal a game, probably.
Yeah, so he's conceded exactly the same amount as he's scored, which just kind of shows you that actually he's kind of working wonders there. He's not kind of, outscoring anybody. He's not handing out kind of 6-0, 7-0, 5-2s. He's just getting the job done. And it's class. It's absolutely class.
I mean, I would agree with that. It was a couple of games ago where they got the 90th minute winner against Devils. And I've got no shame admitting I was fuming. I was just head in hands on the floor, couldn't believe what I'd seen. But you kind of knew it was coming. They have that sort of aura about them. And I found throughout the years, the teams with an identity are the ones that tend to do well. And I don't know what you think, Tato, about. He's very open about the fact he's one of them, doesn't care about the levels of performance. He sits there quite openly and says, I will shithouse any team 1-0. that's his plan. That's what he wants to do.
I think I didn't know the bit that Dimble said about the mental stats, the physical. I hadn't actually looked at him in that much depth at his team, but I mean, his team's a bag of dog shit. If we're being honest, his players wouldn't get into any other. You look at his squad and say who would get into any of the other teams, and barring a couple, you wouldn't take any of them. So I've said for the last couple of months now, what he's doing is absolute wonders with a horrendous side. And like you say, he's happy shithousing, but it's quite hard to shithouse. It's quite hard to shithouse on the game. It's quite hard to get away with your 2-1s and your 1-0s. So the fact that he's doing it that's impressive on its own. I think he's doing absolutely brilliantly. His team's awful, and but he's winning comfortably. So that's why I said he's done an absolutely unbelievable job. Unbelievable job. I don't know how. Literally don't know how he's done it. But fair play to him.
We'll end that segment with just a little round of applause for Greavesy for getting.
Fifey, can I just ask Fifey? Obviously, I don't know how they're going to run kind of the semis and the quarters and all that sort of stuff. How is that happening this year?
So generally speaking, I don't know about the schedule in terms of days and stuff, but it's been pretty consistent throughout the years. So you get, I've got to try and get the numbers right now. So 1 play 2, 3 play 6, 4 play 5. 3 play 6, 4 play 5 over 2 legs. I think normally what happens is the first legs of those get played, and then the second legs get played at the same time as first play second. The winner of first v second goes straight into the final. The winner of 3v6 plays the winner of 4v5. The winner of that plays the loser of 1v2 before the winner of that game then goes into the final. It's very complicated.
So the only thing I would say on that is, with the players that some of the other top teams have got, yourself included, Lettersford included, it's a massive ask to shithouse some of these teams over 2 legs. And I think that is the only thing. And the other question would be, the distance between the first and second leg. I think, we might see how, he's done brilliantly this season. We might see how ridiculously good he is if he manages to go beyond that first 11 because of suspensions or fitness or injuries, and then manages to shithouse not over 90 minutes but over 180 minutes, and he's in the final as a one-off. I'd fancy him if he gets to the final. Absolutely, I fancy him every day of the week. It's just a question of what's beyond that first 11, and has he, with someone who's got that identity and that core 11, can he go beyond that and still do the same?
Well, it's an interesting point on 2 of the things you've said there. Realistically, if you're the winner of that 1v2, I can't remember, I think that's over 2 legs. So at a worst, you've had to play 2 games if you win that to get to the final. Where this is why the teams that finish 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th generally don't, because I think you end up playing 4 games before you get to the final. So you play double the amount of fixtures. But it was a recurring theme midweek. I don't know what you guys thought. There seems to be quite a lot of the star names in the big clubs either getting injured or suspended midweek. And I think in terms of Greavesy, was it Ricardinho either got a red or got injured during the game? Which he's been, with the possible exception of Zé Roberto and possibly Dyer, Ricardinho's in the conversation for player of the season. So depending on how long he's out for, if it's just the 1 game, it's possibly not going to matter too much, but it could be a big loss, that.
Has he been that good, Ricardinho?
Oh, he's changed it for them, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's got much behind that. He's got Effenberg behind that, hasn't he? So it's kind of slim pickings to him. That's where Duggan was saying about past that starting 11, it can get a bit thin. So I wouldn't want to have to play Effenberg 4 times in 2 weeks. That's for sure. Although
he did start the season particularly strongly as well.
He did, yeah, but he's getting on, and I think as you know, if he's not been playing the last few weeks, as soon as you start to leave those older players out, their stats deteriorate quite quickly. So it'd be interesting to see what he looks like now, and if he comes in, will he still be the same player? I very much doubt it, to be honest.
I think if you had your first full team fit, would you take any of their players in your first team?
Me?
Yeah. I don't think you'd get one in.
None that are jumping out at me.
No.
It would solve the ridiculous decisions you're making at left and right wing back at the minute, though, wouldn't it?
That's true. No more Kuhl at left back.
But again, there's a reason for that. You'll notice it's only games where I'm trying to attack more that people like Kuhl play at wing back. This week, we were talking before it started, Van Bronckhorst is back at left wing back this week. Let's make the subject matter bigger, and I'll tell you what, I'll hold my hands up and let it be a open hunting season, if you like. The race for the top two. So you've got Locomotive on 44, Devils on 42, Leddersford 41. Let's not rule out Bostock on 38. Devils sinking quicker than the Titanic. It was due to come at some point. Who do you guys think will finish top two as it stands, and in what order?
I'll go first. I think we will see potentially a Leddersford late surge for the top spot, and I would back Boston to hang on as they have done for most of the time this season. Just cling on to that second spot, and I think if I was to put kind of money on it, I would be putting that on the Devils to drop out. But saying that, it's in your hands, so it's not an impossibility. But I think in terms of percentages, it's probably slightly against you at the minute. Well, Leddersford have been so good the last few weeks. I kind of called it when they were just snuck into the playoffs and everyone was talking about how tight it was. I just said, I think I put in the comments, Leddersford to win the next 4 games and ruin the playoff run. But it's kind of turned out that a few teams have made it interesting since then. But if you look at where Leddersford are now compared to at the time, they just snuck into the playoffs and now they're 5 points clear of 7th spot. So yeah, they've been really good over the last few weeks.
Well, again, something we were talking about off air, obviously just before we started, was in terms of Devils, we're only 2 points off top with 2 games to go. So there's every chance if we play the form that we had a couple of weeks back, we could still yet finish top. But the other day, I actually predicted us to finish 5th because of how close everything is. It's been ridiculously tight this season. Duggan, what's your thoughts on the top 2 at the moment?
I think you'll do it. I think you'll hang on to second, and I just think you'll hang on to second because of the attacking power you've got in your squad. You know, you've scored the most goals out of everybody in the league in terms of conceding. You haven't conceded, anywhere ridiculously above or below what the average is. I think you've got enough going forward to get the job done. What's your fixtures left, by the way?
So if you want me to run through this, so I've got Bostock. And then I've got Haggis. Locomotive have got Dudley Hill and then Northern Burn. Leddersford have got Dragons, obviously, and then finish with Sloths. And Bostock obviously play myself and finish with Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, Locomotive rightfully so are going to finish top. I think you'll just hang on to second. And I also hope you hang on to second because I genuinely think you deserve it. But also, I think a Locomotive Leddersford final is the final I want to see. I think they've both been the most consistent across the course of the season. I think they've both been the most impressive. They're probably the managers that have relied least on, tens from one player, a Ronaldinho or, somebody else, or a Sigalgo or a Van Nistelrooy or whatever. Definitely not a Batistuta. So I would like to see Leddersford kind of hang on to third, get third, you get second, and a Locomotive and Leddersford final, I think, is probably the final I want to see. I do fancy Sloths to get into the playoffs. I'm not quite sure at whose expense. And I can't sit here and say I want Jens to drop out because I think he's great.
I don't know how much you feel it will play a part, Tato, but we finished with 2 away games. Scott's Bostock Stanley team finished with 2 home games. Do you think that will have any bearing on it?
Possibly. I think what has more of a bearing on which crap players you choose for your games, which I'll let you reveal who you're choosing. But I think listening to the fixtures, I think I'd go with a Boston winning it there. And like we said, rightfully so. And I think Leddersford will win. I think Leddersford will come second. I think they've got the easier fixtures. I think you'll struggle against Bostock because they're on form and the trajectories are completely opposite yours and theirs. I feel like you'll struggle. I know for a fact that Haggis would love to do one over on you, so I think you might struggle the last game as well. So just off the fixtures, which like the lads have said, it would be a shame. I would like you to finish top 2 because the football you guys played earlier on in the season was some of the best I'd seen in the last few iterations of Super League. I thought you were absolutely brilliant watching you, but you've messed it up a little bit there. You've gone off the boil. So
I almost think the best Fikey story would be for you to kind of mess it up now and then come back and win the whole lot. That'd make me most pleased. I think if you finished 5th or 6th and then they end up winning the lot after taking you'll probably take an unreal amount of stick over the next week or so if that happened. That's what I want to see. That's my fairy tale for 5p.
Well, I'm the first team to get to 42 points and still not have a Q against his name. It would only be me that would get that.
Exactly.
You've all sort of mentioned a couple of teams there, Sloths, Haggis. Let's have a look at those still chasing, the Q and the top 6. So if we take out the 4 we've spoken about already, we've got Halls on 37, Fulchester 37, Sloths 36, Gazelles 34. And out of respect, I'll keep Haggis in there because they're only 4 points behind on 33. And a lot of them are playing each other, but there are some crucial games where they're perhaps playing teams where you'd expect them to win. So if I run through it quickly, Pools have got Astor and Bostock. A win against Astor and they're pretty much there, I would say. So that the Bostock game then becomes less important potentially. Fulchester have got Churchtown and Astor. I would argue they've probably got the easiest run-in of all the teams. Although I know Macca he's actually genuinely worried that after everything he said about Alpha this year, Astor are going to be the team that screws him out of it on the last day. Sloths, who have just dropped out the top 6 for the first time in God knows how long after they seem nailed on for a place. They've got Northern Burn and then finish with Leddersford. So that's not easy, who, as you guys have said, could be looking for top spot in that game. So they won't be going easy on them. Gazelles have got Haggis and Dudley. And by rights, Haggis have got Gazelles and then myself. Tato, I keep making you go last. I'll let you go first this time. Out of the remaining teams, if we're saying those 4 have got their places, all but the Q, which of the 5 will get the other 2 spots? Sorry.
I would imagine Hools, listening to the first game, I would imagine they'd beat Astor, but then you've got Alf just pulls out these results out of nowhere against teams that are quite clearly better than him. So it could be one of those games. But I would imagine Hools would get the win there. I would say I would want Haggis aside. I would want Sloths to get in just because I'm a big fan of the way they've gone about the season. So I would be rooting for them. But you can't really tell with all of those teams. Fulchester there have got a very easy couple of games. So you'd think they're in as well, but I don't know.
Is that pressure on Macca? The fact that he's got this easier run in, is it a case of because of his run in, he should be making it?
Yeah, probably. I would say so. I would say he could get 6 points there.
I think the thing is, what I will say from and I've not had many dealings with Macca like over the course of this kind of lockdown in Super League. He'll not give a fuck how easy his running will be. He could be playing top 2 and he'd still think, yeah, I've got to go out and get the fucking job done. And you know what? Hats off to him. So I think, if it was maybe someone like yourself, Fifey, I think you'd be feeling the pressure because it was teams that you should be beating. But he'll get his best players, the best 11 available on the pitch, regardless of the formation, and he'll back himself to go out there and get the job done. He does deserve to be in there.
Flip it the other way. The fact that Sloths have been 3rd for so long, and they're the only team kind of worse than me form-wise at the minute. They have dropped. Can you see them turning it round, or are they pretty much done?
Was that to me?
Yeah.
They deserve to be there. They were 3rd for a long, long time. Without looking at the results and kind of looking at them, I don't know kind of exactly where it's went wrong. But if you've got one player scoring 19 goals, if he turns up and puts in an 8 or a 9 in these next 2 games, you'd think that's enough. The kind of general point I'd make is I think out of all those teams you've mentioned that are kind of in the chase and pack, maybe with the exception of Gazelles, you know, so the three, Hools, Fulchester, Spartak. I think if any three of those get 4 points out of the last couple of games, they're in. Because I just think the nature of the league is that people take points off each other. You know, and there's 90th minute goals and the sending offs and all that sort of stuff. So I think if those three, Hools, Fulchester and Spartak, I think, you know, whoever gets 4 points out of those three, then I think that's enough.
I think Jens is a popular choice among everyone, managers and fans alike, to get a spot. Everyone would love to see him in the playoffs.
Topless.
Topless.
I would love to see him topless, yeah.
Fulchester, we said the pressure's on them with the easy running. Sloths, the pressure's on them because of how far they've dropped. When you look at Gazelles and Haggis, Dimble, Gazelles were tipped before a ball was kicked as the favourites. Is it a nightmare for them if they don't make it? And, you know, Haggis, it is a 4-point gap. They have got two teams above them before they even get to the top six. Is the miracle still on for them? Could they make it?
I can't see it for either of them, to be honest. And I didn't rate Gazelles as highly as kind of the general consensus was at the start of the season. I thought they'd be mid-table, and then they are. Haggis, I expected better, but if you actually look at the kind of attacking options they got, I'm not surprised they've struggled a little bit. But the base of that team is so good that they should be doing better. So I think Ian will be disappointed with how it's turned out. But I think the job's too big for them. I think it's done for them. Gladly eat my words, because I like both the teams, and if both one of them snuck in or both of them snuck in somehow, I'd be delighted for them. But I do think it's too late. I think Sloths are the only one that could potentially turn it around from the top six as it stands. And with Sloths, I think with Zeriberto going out injured, looks like he's out for a couple of weeks. I think Ryan clicked on him and it said 2 weeks. That means he's probably going to miss the next fixture and maybe the one after. So, I mean, you've seen how important he is to them. And I kind of expect what's happened to the Sloths now. I kind of expected it all season. It's happened later than I thought it would, and he's done an incredible job with the players he's got. But it's kind of I don't think it's a massive failure to drop out of the playoffs at this point. I think you just got to say we've had a good run, and I think with a couple of transfers for next season, I think he's got another chance of making the playoffs. But I think he's overachieved in the first part of the season, which then kind of gives the narrative that he's failing. But the reality is his squad is not that much better than teams in 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. So you've got to see it as an achievement in a way.
A couple of interesting words you used there was failure and overachievement. So before we move on to the next cluster of teams, if I can just ask you all, just simply one word, out of the 5 that we're saying are battling for the last 2 spots, who has failed the most if they don't make it? Dimble, I'll start with you.
Out of the 5 that are battling?
Yeah.
I think Hulls, if they failed from here, I think that would be the biggest failure, but just because of the strike force they've got, and they've got some good players sprinkled throughout the defence midfield as well. But yeah, with that strike force, I think it would be a failure if he didn't make it from their point of view. I know he took a while to get going, didn't he, with his formation, and he's shown how strong the team is. So yeah, I think that would be the biggest one for me.
As soon as I asked the question, Duggan went head in hand. So I'm going to ask Tato next, who would be the biggest failure if they didn't make it.
From this point on, I would say, looking at fixtures and points and position currently, I would say Fulchester. I'd be very surprised if they didn't make it.
And Duggan, which one are you going for?
What I will say is I think out of all the teams in the league, we are the biggest failure this season, and I'm sure we'll come on to that because he wouldn't have invited us on to not address that. But I'll kind of take a slightly different take. I know the lads have kind of went from, your starting position now, who's classed as the failure. But I think Gazelles, I get what Dimble's saying, but I do think they had a standout squads. They were one of 3 for me, standout squads. And I think, when you look at the league table, they've drawn more games than everybody else. There's one other team that have drawn with them, and that's Northern Burn. The squad he had, the attacking options he had, from being a fairly new person looking at the Super League, I always think it's win or bust. I'd rather get smashed 4-0, than grind out 3, nil-nils, because you shouldn't, just with the players you've got, you shouldn't have the excuse of not putting goals away. He turns 2 of those draws into wins, and he's up there, and he's comfortably up there. He turns 3 of them into wins, and he's got a queue. He's there. He's in the playoffs. Sorry. So I think Gazelles, for me, they were one of 2 or 3 standout squads at the start of the season. Yeah.
No, I can understand that, and I can see where all of you have come from on that, because I would say if we were at the beginning of the season looking at those teams, I would agree Gazelles is the biggest failure if they don't make it. But equally, if we're looking at it as we are now, given that I tipped Halls to win it at the start of the season, and I must admit I was ruining that after the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks. But if they don't make it, I think it would be a failure. Let's flip right to the other end of the table, and Doug, we'll stick with you as you've brought it up. That there is still a battle on for the wooden spoon. There's 2 points separating Dragons and Astor. Astor play Halls away, and then Fulchester at home. Dragons end with Leddersford at home before Churchtown away. I won't ask you to put your finger on what's gone wrong. I think it's been well questioned and documented by lots of people. But is the mood in the camp still that you can get off the bottom?
Yeah, I think 1 win does that, and I think we aim to beat Churchtown last game of the season. To do that, I don't see Alf getting anything from any of those 2 games. I just think the 2 teams he's got left to play are far too strong, and that's no disrespect to him. Yeah, I think we aim to beat Churchtown last game of the season, and if we do that, we'll not finish bottom. But like you said, I think it's well documented where it's went wrong, but also, when Jamie asked us to get involved at the start of the season, me and Wood were kind of like, right, well, what can we offer? Do you know what I mean? The people in there are you guys are great managers, and the product's great, and Ryan and Martin and all that sort of stuff. So we did try to have a laugh with it, and we did think, can we be the team that offers something a little bit different, that maybe doesn't have a meltdown if we get smashed, and doesn't take it as seriously as others. And to be honest, all 3 of us were all throughout lockdown and kind of 1, 2, and 3 lockdown, all working, fortunately, in kind of jobs that still went and what kind of more stressful for it. So I just for the record, wasn't certainly investing it wasn't the end of the world for me that we were kind of becoming a bit of a running joke every Wednesday, who's in charge and who's at the wheel, and hashtag Hopkins out and all that sort of stuff. And for a while, we did want to keep that going, and we did want to kind of have that as a little bit of a little bit of diversity in the league. But then when you're looking at finishing bottom, and Batistutas, shitting all over the pitch, and Oliver Kahn's got fucking lettuce for wrists, then you've got to kind of try and do something, because this is a game we've played for the best part of 20 odd years and wasted 3 lifetimes on. So you've kind of got to protect the integrity of it a little bit. But yeah, so I think hopefully we'll beat Churchtown last game of the season and not finish bottom.
And you said a minute ago that you consider Dragons the biggest failures of the season, period. Where do you rate the current squad compared to others? Do you feel you should be a top 6 team, or maybe one of those just outside at the moment?
We should be in that chasing pack. There's no reason why we shouldn't be chasing with Spartak slots. Do you know what I mean? We've had a mare. We traded Collins for Kerr because midfield, centre midfield was a particularly weak spot for us. And we've lost out on 19 goals as a result. Funnily enough, we've also struggled at AMC, despite having some good AMCs in there. We binned off Nedved. Seedorf hasn't really cut it. De Alessandro's probably a year too young. Archie back from Haggis has came in and probably been on form, one of the best players that we've had, and he's only played 6 or 7 games. So that's what's cost us. You give us those 19 goals of Davy Collins playing in AMC behind 2 strikers, regardless of one's Batistuta or not, and we're probably much higher up the table. I do think us and Haggis, and I'm not just saying it because Tato was on the call, but I do think us and Haggis have been probably the most let down by those star names that we've had in the squads.
Would you agree, Tato? Have Haggis been let down by their star names as well?
Yeah, I'd agree there. Yeah, you've got some Yeah, you've got some players that have really dropped low in their average ratings and things like that, and their performances. Vieira's rocking about a 7.65, I think it was. You don't get that on a home save or on any Super League save ever, whether you play him in a 1 or 2 or 3. You don't get those ratings from him ever. He's just one example, and then going forwards as well. You've been let down by Henrik Larsson. People loving him, and I think he's bagged about 6 or 7 goals maximum, and he's played most games. Just those sort of players that you pull out the big hats. If they don't perform for you, you're scrabbling around for the rest of the players. And like Duncan said, let down a bit there by the big names. Yeah, agreed. And then you've got the likes of David Collins, who God knows why you got rid of him. I don't understand that. He's the greatest player on the game. But people like that have come to the fore. They've really come to the fore this season, which I'm absolutely loving. Your Scallies, your Collinses, even Sigalko and Madeira are showing up this year, which I think is brilliant. I think it really freshens it up, and people have a little bit of a different take on who they're signing, hopefully in the future. And that top pot might not be as strong as people once thought it was, sort of thing. You got your Salases and maybe your Batistutas are going to be overlooked or swapped and traded out for lesser, your Javans. Get your Javans in there, people like that, because this year it seems to have worked to a degree. So yeah, in agreement there.
For me, a good example of that is Torres, who's 12 on the game, and he's scored as many goals as he is years old, I think, already, considering he wasn't getting a game at the start.
He's in the top. He's in the top 10 goal scorers already. I was just looking the other day before. Well, he's 12th, and he's only played about 5 or 6 games. He's absolutely banging him in.
Dimble, back to the bottom 2. Do you see Dragons being able to overthrow Astor, or do you think that they've just not done enough this season?
Well, they've definitely not done enough, that's for sure. In terms of overthrowing Astor, what's the point difference? Is it
2 points?
2 points. Yeah, so they've got every chance. Astor have got a couple of difficult games. So yeah, I think Duggan's right. If they win that last game of the season, they've got a chance. But I probably expect a wet fart from both teams, to be honest, and end up with 1 point more each or something like that. That's how I would predict it would go.
And a lot of people have criticised Alf's team this time round for various reasons. I mean, even I was spitting feathers with the way they capitulated midweek. But I don't know, Dimble, if you can offer any positives about what is going on to give people who do support Alf and want Alf to do well that next year could be better.
It's tough to say because he's got quite an old squad, hasn't he? He might have some good player coaches soon. That's one benefit I see. I think Alf obviously he puts a lot of time into it, puts a lot of effort into it. So I wouldn't kind of bet against him turning it around to some degree. But I think with the transfers he's made, Henry springs to mind. But I think there's been others that he's made, and he's held on to players that he's not used when he's had the chance to get players in. I think he's kind of shot himself in the foot with that stuff, and he's probably made his squad weaker in a way. Players like Duff, I know he's not overly keen on Duff, but he's kept him because everyone wanted him, which seems a bit of a strange move where he could have got a player that he really needed. And if he is going to play narrow, which seems to be his better tactic, then Duff's good there, but he's not going to use him, is he? So yeah, I think Alf probably needs to kind of have obviously he's putting a lot of testing time in and playing the game a lot, which pays off to a certain extent. But I think he probably needs to be a bit more open with his transfers rather than being a bit set in his ways in terms of the scouting stuff and getting the older players in. Maybe he needs to take a bit of a punt on some younger players.
Well, my next question was just briefly going to be to all three of you. What's your thoughts on the CM Scout? I know it's been a discussion point. Alf uses it a lot. A lot of other people rubbish it because some of the champ legends don't feature highly on it. What are all your thoughts on it?
I'll start off by saying I've never even looked at it. I don't know what it is, so crack on, you two.
Same for me. I've not used it. I've got through one of the patches. You can open up the save file and you can see stuff, but it's not CM Scout. It's something else on Nick's patcher. So yeah, I've not used it. I don't know what it looks at. Does it look at the strength of certain attributes and stuff like that for certain positions. Is that what it does? And then next to so yeah, I think it's a very kind of statistical way of looking at it, a bit of a Moneyball approach, and it's obviously not quite worked for him this season. But like I say, I wouldn't put it past Alf putting a stronger run together next year and pushing kind of mid-table, maybe pushing for the playoffs. But I think he's kind of, like I say, shot himself in the foot a little bit by being a bit too CM Scout kind of focused and not kind of going with his gut a bit more.
Is David Collins in the top 10 best players on the game on CM Scout?
No.
I'll forget it then.
Duggan, have you ever used it?
I haven't made no, and I just kind of want to make 2 points kind of on that. The first is that I disagree with Dimble about Alf. I think even though he's struggling, I love the fact that he plays the game the way he does. If you said out of every manager in the league, if you said which out of all the teams in the league, out of all the managers in the league, write down what one of their teams looks like. So what is a Fifey team? What is, other than bottling it, what is, a Macca team? What is a Dudley Hill team? What is an Alf team? And I think he's the only one that you could chuck it against the wall and it would look like an Alf team. I love the fact that all of us lads that are going through middle life crises, we've got kids and, all that sort of stuff, that we're like immersed in it and it's a bit of a renaissance. I love the fact that he's in there. And I love the fact that he just plays it the way he does, and he posts little screenshots of like Raul at 38 banging in 5 at the camp now. You know what I mean? Like, I love that, and I think I'm a big one on narrative. Like, I love that's what pulls me in on this. Who are the players that are going to bite people in the arse, and the banter on Twitter and all that sort of stuff. I think that doesn't happen if you just say, I want to sign the best players and play the best, play the iodine formation in Wib-Wob and all that sort of stuff. So I think Alf, hats off to you. Keep it going, mate. You might not win anything, but like you absolutely get me respect. And on the CM Scout thing, never used it. I'm a big believer that home saves mean fuck all. CM Scout means fuck all. And, Dimble, Fifey, you guys can probably vouch for this. Once you start playing network games against other human controlled players in real time, that's when you see who the real players are and who the real managers are and who the top players are. And I think that for me, like, I'd rather run a network save with a player that I thought was good, see how they got up against playing another human manager 4 times potentially a season, seeing how they do there, because I think that's the real litmus test.
Yeah, just going back to the Alf thing quickly. Yeah, I agree with Doug with what he's saying. It's good to have a bit of variety and a bit of difference, and yeah, keep going, Alf. Don't change what you're doing for us. Has
Steve told you to say that just so he doesn't have to worry about getting 6 points next season, or what?
Tato, quickly with you, what's your thoughts? Who's going to finish bottom?
Yeah, I'd probably say Astor as well. I'd probably say that their fixture running is more difficult than the Dragons. I think the Dragons have turned a bit of a corner last 5 games. Even if they've not picked up the points, they've put in the performance. They've been a lot closer, and they've not necessarily more seriously, but they've made a lot of better choices recently. I think Alf. Yeah, I'm like Duggan and Dimble as well. I think he's absolutely class what he does. I love his little stories, his home saves, his mystery players. He's a brilliant character to have around. I think he's stuck with a narrow formation, which I actually love, but this season's been absolutely saturated with a 2-4 formation, and narrow isn't going to beat that. Unfortunately, it's not going to do well against that. I am not a big fan of the 2-4. I think it's very, very boring, but it's been very successful this year, and everyone's using it. So maybe next year, if the trend is that it goes to a narrow sort of direction again, then maybe you'll start to pick up points and go up the league. But at the moment and for the foreseeable, I can't see it changing from those wide men in a 2-4 or a 2-3, and that's where he struggles, I think, unfortunately, because I do like a narrow.
It is true. In other incarnations of the Super League, there was very much a wide to narrow to wide again. So there is every chance that narrow will become popular again next season, and everything will change. There's just one more thing I wanted to touch on, in the interest of fairness, if we can, and that's the 3 remaining teams who I'm very respectfully calling the meh section. They can't challenge for the top 6. They're not in the battle for the bottom 2. Then we'll start with you, and you can take your pick. You can talk about Dees Dudley team. You can talk about Northern Burn, or we've got Churchtown as well in that little cluster.
I will let Duggan lay into Steve because I think it would make for better viewing. I'll take Northern Burn because I'm a big fan of what Ian's done. I think he's obviously had a really slow start, didn't he? Like really slow start. Didn't win a game for about 6 or 7. But without having any real creativity in midfield, he's climbed the table a little bit and he's put a good run together. So if he could get a bit of creativity in that centre midfield area, it's a team that could do very well next year. I think he's got the forward players and I can't remember off the top of my head who's in defence, but it seemed reasonably solid. Even when he was losing games, he wasn't getting his pants pulled down. So yeah, I think Northern Burn are one to watch for next season. I think they have underachieved this year with the squad they've got, but underachievement.
That's just textbook, Ian, I'm afraid, because his BTEC squad was the same. It was much better than how they finished.
Yeah, well, I'm not. I watched a bit of last season. I'm not a big historian of the Super League, but I understand that. Yeah, Ian's done that before. So, if Ian kind of gets his game right next year, I think you can see him pushing for the top half of the table definitely. I'll let Duggan lay into Steve. I think that'd be the best viewing going.
Go on then, Duggan. If you want to take Dudley Hill.
Listen, I'm going to let Dimble down, and I'm not going to lay into him because I think he's class. What I will say, listen, is I thought Dudley Hill should have been nailed on for top 3 based on some of those players they got in the squad draws. I thought it was a really, really good squad. Ashley Cole, Roberto Carlos, Robin, Van der Vaart, Sutton, who's a bit of a he's a bit of an under the radar on the game. He always seems to do well. The likes of Roy Keane and Totti and Chiotis. I think Steve will be the first to admit that he should have done a hell of a lot better than he has. I think, if he was to rewind 10 or 11 games back, I think he got inside his own head a little bit and tried to kind of second guess himself and tried to second guess kind of the opposition a little bit instead of just trying to get the best 11 players onto the pitch and just playing to his strengths. And I think, you can see how Super League does that to you. You can see how Super League does that to you because one, you're not playing it live. 2, there's gamesmanship going on, so you don't know if people are genuine when they are posting those 11 or on a Thursday night or Friday night or whenever they go up. But yeah, I think you'd be the first to say that he should be doing much better. I'm just going to say this now as well. I think I was the first person to say out loud that Northern Burn are the ones to watch next season. I think Edwards is absolutely class. I think the creative content he puts out and how he supports kind of other people with all that sort of stuff. I think if there's one person that deserves to do well and win it, it's probably him. And he'd probably say that again. He maybe overthought it early doors and the thing with Super League, and I say this having failed at this experiment with Dragons, you've got to give a formation and a lineup 5 games before you can really assess if it's the one for you. If you start getting sucked into the games of what's the other person going to do, or he's played 2 6s, so I need to drop him, that sort of home save stuff just doesn't fly. I think from being in it and being in the trenches, you've got to give it 5-6 games before you even can realistically assess anybody or any decision that you've made, really. But yeah, I think Ian next season is my choice.
Tato, that leaves you with Churchtown and a manager who it's a shame because I really like Kieran and he is a manager who's used to being much higher, but his squad just wasn't up to it this year.
No, I think that he's possibly the definition of the meh season. I think it hasn't really looked like challenging, apart from that little winning run he went on. But ever since then, it has been very, very meh. It's just sort of they seem to roll over quite easily, Churchtown. But there's no reason to say they won't be back and pushing it next year with the quality of the manager. But I think, yeah, very, very meh. Northern Burn, I think I said since the start of the season, especially since he made his transfers, his team is probably one that I would assemble in a home save. I'd have probably 8 of his players in my favourite, 11 in a home save. The likes in a signing, I think he signed Robben. He got Robben in, didn't he? Is that right? I'm remembering right there. swap Rabena for someone with Steve or Crespo, was it maybe? Signing Rabena's an absolutely brilliant signing. Getting Henry in because Alf was, honourable, which is fair play to Alf. That's the guy he is. But getting him in for someone, Shearer, wasn't it? That's an unbelievable deal. I think Northern Burn are, massive, going to be really, really good, considering they didn't win for about 7 or 8 games, did they? Now they've, not a million miles away from that chasing pack towards the playoffs, so they have turned it around. I think they will be massive next year. I think if he makes a couple of signings, and that's all he needs, a couple more, I don't think, he's got one of the strongest first 11 in the league. Dudley Hill, I'm a massive fan of Steve. He's very, very fun to wind up. But I think he's, when Duggan reeled off all those players there, I'm thinking, how is he nowhere near the top 6? How's he done that? And I looked at his bench on the last game they played on, they were on Wednesday, and there's 4. I know Barnby came on and did a job, but for the squad that he's got, to have those 4 players on the bench is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that he's binned off some high quality players, or he's got these high quality players getting 5s and 6s. He's got so many of them. And he did, he's done some decent transfers, but then, getting rid of Robin because he thinks someone told him he was too young, or he thought he was too young. That's not a thing. He's got 20s all over the place. It's not, it doesn't, the game isn't really counting on your age so much, really, to be quite honest. You can play anybody if they've got that many 20s. So yeah, I think Dudley will have massively failed, but Steve will be the first one to admit that, because his enthusiasm has probably made him struggle towards the earlier part of the season, hasn't it? He's so into it, isn't he?
I think Tato makes a really good point there on transfers, and I think it kind of brings Dudley Hill and Churchtown quite nicely together. Also, Tato, that's the first time I've ever heard Iron Robin pronounced like that, by the way. So hats off to you, mate. Like 20 odd years of watching football. Dudley got rid of Robin, and Churchtown got rid of Davids for Ashley Cole, and that for me is massive. You do not get rid of Edgar Davids unless it's for Patrick Vieira. So I think that's probably where it's went wrong.
Lads, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this evening. Thank you very much. If I can finish with just one final question, it is a 2-parter. If you could have and I know you've touched on this already, to be fair, Duggan, if you could have your dream final, who would it be and who's going to win it? Dimble?
Dream final would be Devils versus Hulls. Jens to have his top off live on the comm, and Fifey to bag a win with an Penza hat trick. That's my dream final.
Fifey to sleep through the winner with his cats off celebrating.
Yeah.
Duggan, what I know you sort of suggest, was it Leddersford and Boston for your final?
Yeah, listen, Fifey, I'd love you to do it, mate. I think, you've been involved in the league for a long, long time, and, content, putting out stuff like this and kind of just generally getting involved. I think if anyone deserves it, you do, mate. So if you did, I'd be absolutely cock a hoop for you. But I think in terms of who are the managers that deserve to be there, probably, and who are the managers that have done the best with what they've got, I think a Boston Leddersford final, and I think nobody can really begrudge Greavesy if he does it, even though he's got a shit beard.
Tato?
I'd want to see Devils Bostock, I think. Bostock because they're hitting form and scoring goals, and yourself because you've got goals in you as well. I think the game would have goals in it. I think any final with Boston in is going to be dull, if I'm honest, whoever they're playing. So as good as he's done, as he deserves it and all that, but he can have manager of the year and let someone else win the title.
And who wins that final?
Not you, because you'll drop Penza and you'll put Barry Ferguson at defensive mid.
Listen, lads, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if I don't speak to you before, if you're not able to come to Lads Night tomorrow, then I look forward to talking to you on Sunday on match day.
Will Jens have his top off?
I do believe Jens is coming to Lads Night. I cannot.
Right, I'm there.
I'm in.
I'm there. Yeah, I'm in. You just stop there, Fifey.
I'm in. Yeah.
Listen, lads. Good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will speak to you soon.
Cheers, mate. See you
boys.
later.
Okay.